If you look back to the history of China, Chinese people were ruled by different powers in different period of time. For thousands of years, they were ruled by monarch king. Then, they were ruled by Western powers. Britain ruled China for a long period of time. Silks were found in China, so Britain made the Chinese people work hard to grow the silk and takes the silk to the Britain. After that, Japan also ruled China for a short period of time. Today, we're going to talk about Mao Zedong, who is also known as the founding father of People's Republic of China. He was a communist, and he has an important role for the development of farmers in China. Some believe him as a great hero or leader, whereas some believe him as a cruel dictator. Mao Zedong was born on 26 December 1893 in Sassoon village, Yunnan, China. His father was a farmer and was very strict towards Mao Zedong. He did not have a good relation with him, whereas his mother was a religious Buddhist. From his childhood, he used to study lots of books. His marriage gets fixed when he was 14 years old, but Mao goes against this marriage and runs away from his house. Because of this, his wife-to-be gets mentally disturbed and she dies in 1910. Due to the death of a girl in such an early age, he was forced to move out from his village. He used to study the biography of historically important figures from his childhood. He was influenced by George Washington, who was the founding father of United States of America, and Napoleon, who was a military leader of France. During those days, China was ruled by Qing dynasty, which ruled China from 1644 to 1911. Farmers were having a hard time. The landlords were doing lots of abuse to the farmers. There were lots of protests against them, and Mao used to support this protest. In 1912, the rule of monarchy gets over and a new government is formed, which views are nationalist. He completes his degree in 1918 and becomes a teacher. His mother dies in the same year. He worked as a librarian in Beijing University. On the same time, one of the most important events in the history was taking place. In 1917, revolution was happening in Russia in the leadership of Lenin, and the huge nation was becoming a communist. He got so much inspired by this movement and believes that the China should have a communist government as well. By taking an example of Russian Revolution, he established a communist party in China in 1921. He goes to each and every house of the farmers and asks them for their help to establish communism in China. Around 1927, the nationalist government of China begins to hunt down and kill the people with communist thought. Mao goes towards the hilly area and establishes the Soviet Republic of China and begins to collect his own army. This slowly started a civil war in China. He slowly began to capture the area of China with his own armies. In October 1934, almost 1 million soldiers surrounded the area that was captured by communists, and Mao takes a step back. This is known as a long march in the history. The next year, the communists moves 13,000 kilometers towards the north of China, Shaanxi, where only 30,000 people survive out of 100,000. Mao again starts to find and join people in his army. In July 1937, Japanese soldiers attack China. After this, the government of China and the party of Mao comes together and fight against Japan. In 1939, the Second World War begins, which will last till 1945, and Japan loses the war. America plays an important role for the loss of Japan in this war. After Japan lost the war in China, the Nationalist Party and the Communist Party again starts to fight for power, which lasted from June 1945 to 1949, and this time, Communist comes as a winner. The Nationalist Party loses and the leader of Nationalist Party escapes to Taiwan. Mao finally comes to the power. On 1st October 1949, Mao officially announced China as People's Republic of China. So, this ended a 20 years of civil war and Mao Zedong becomes the first president. At the same time, there was a Cold War happening between America and Russia around the world. There were lots of tension happening between North Korea and South Korea as well. Russia and China supported North Korea, whereas USA supported South Korea. When there was a civil war happening around China, Mao and his Communist Party were greatly supported by North Korea. Mao was strictly against America, and he even announced to reject any American products. In 1952, during Korean War, their slogans were "Resist America and Help Korea." Mao began to kill anyone who stood against him. Mao started to kill each and every single enemy of him. He announced to take the land from landowners by the means of force and distribute amongst the farmers who are getting abused for so many years. Lots of landowners were getting killed by this announcement. This helps China to remove economic difference between people. Mao himself admitted that almost 7 million people were killed during this revolution. In 1953, for the first time in China, there was a 5-year government policy, which was first used by Lenin in the world. Lots of rights were given to the women. Lots of schools and hospitals were constructed. He abolished all the private properties and all the resources now belongs to the state. The state fixed the production of crop, but it affected the farmers negatively, as now they didn't have enough crops for themselves and have to submit all the grown crops to the state. The farmers used to work day and night, and still they were starving to death. Almost 6 million people were working day and night. People were dying of hunger and starvation. In January 1958, Mao implies Great Leap Forward policy, by which he has plans to do industrial revolution. For this, he started to open lots of factories and started to produce steel. People were forced to work day and night, but China still didn't have good technique to make good quality of steel. The steel that were produced were of third-grade quality, which becomes the worst problem for Mao and China. After this, from 1959 to 1961, there was a Great Famine. This becomes the Great Famine in the history of the world. The private property of the people was slowly taken away by the state. Their houses get captured. The people who are unable to work start to die slowly due to hunger. The situation gets out of control. People becomes weak due to hunger and slowly they cannot even work. Food production collapsed completely. Almost 40 million people died due to this. People started to eat grass and soil due to the shortage of crops, from which they became sick and died. People were not even allowed to beg for any help. Mao blamed this to the birds instead of his own policy. He blamed that the birds are the reason as they eat crops and asked people to kill the birds to save the crops. Now Chinese people begins to kill and hunt the birds. Now a new problem arises in China. There is not enough birds to kill the insects on the crops, and the insects began to destroy the crops. This arises a condition of famine in the country and the situation gets worse. It was clear that Mao brings a revolution in the country, but he cannot manage the country. In 1962, after almost 25 years and after the death of millions of people and due to the economic crisis, Mao slowly gets cornered from the power and later he was taken out from his party as well. Later, he starts the Cultural Revolution and starts to join young and students in his party. He said China is backward due to the old tradition thinking and also asks all the young people to join this revolution. He said that the young people are the future of China. He re-established his party and came out as a leader once again. He once again began to kill his enemy one by one and even killed big politicians and leaders. Lastly, in 1969, he officially announced the end of Cultural Revolution. Almost 400,000 people were killed in this revolution. He died on 9 September 1976 at the age of 82 due to Parkinson. In Nepal as well, the Maoist party were inspired from Mao's idea. The Western country sees him as a dictator who killed lots of people to come in power, whereas in China, he is seen as a great leader who helped China from outside power and helped in revolution of China. That's all for Mao. Thank you.